means, first of all, how do you know what's going on around you? You and I have all sorts of complicated senses. We listen to things, we see things, we smell things, we touch things. But what do other animals do? How are they aware of what's going on in the environment around them? So that's one of the questions we want to ask. What kind of senses do they have? When you receive sensations, you touch something and it's hot, that information has to go somewhere. Otherwise, you don't know it's hot, right? So when you touch something, the temperature of it triggers something in nerves in your body which go to your brain, and your brain tells you whether or not you need to move your finger. And so once you receive senses, you move the information, the impulses, from the place that has received the sensation to other parts of your body. And that travels down cords of nerves. So do these animals have a nerve cord? Is there some way of moving things from one part of the body to another? If they have a special nerve cord, is that nerve cord protected somehow? Is it protected by a notochord? And if it's protected by a notochord, does that notochord ultimately turn into bone and protect it with bone, called spine? So that's one series of questions we want to ask about the nerve cord. So what kind of senses does it have? And then, let me lay it out like that. What kind of senses does it have? And then, what about its nerve cord? So if it has a nerve cord, sometimes what animals do is along the nerve cord, they have places where there are bundles of tons and tons of nerves. So instead of it just being like a highway, there's this sort of like highway with interchanges where there are lots of nerves there and they can process information. It might look sort of like this. You've got a nerve cord, and along the nerve cord you have bundles, right? Where the nerves all collect together, like in little gangs of nerves. They're called ganglia. So this is a nerve cord with lots and lots of ganglia. And notice that the biggest ganglion is at the end. So there's a really big one at the end. So that's one that is just a cord with a whole bunch of ganglia. You also can get one where you have a nerve cord with this huge bunch of ganglia at the end, and the ganglia at the end have started to separate into segments, and the segments have different jobs to do. So it looks kind of like that, and you notice that the ganglion at the end is in sections. So when the big pile of ganglia at the end you can call a brain, and if the brain is separated into different sections that are sort of specialized, then it's a more complicated or complex brain. So we're also going to look at the brain, because that's sort of the center of the sensation, of the sensitivity system. So if it has a brain, that brain could consist of a bunch of ganglia. It could be a really simple full brain, not just a bunch of different ganglia along the pathway, but it's piled up at one end enough so that you could call it a simple brain, or it might actually be sectioned into specialized sections so that it has a more complicated brain. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the nerve cord thing. So, say you have a nerve cord. This is a nerve cord. See this little nerve cord? So this nerve cord is, by definition, made of sensitive nerves. And so you really want to protect something that is made of nerves. If you take this nerve cord and you just take something stiff and put it next to it so that it can grow next to something so that it can't get bent too much, you'd end up with something that looks sort of like this, and that's what a notochord does.
Is that a plastic straw?
It's just a plastic straw, yeah.
Plastic straw and a pipe cleaner?
And a pipe cleaner. So the nerve cord is along next to the notochord, along next to the notochord, which keeps it from bending too much and keeps it, you know. If, on the other hand, you got a little more sophisticated than that, and you said, let's take the nerve cord and we'll put it inside a tube of bone, so it's really protected. The good news is it's really protected, right? The bad news is that if that were you, you'd be like this all the time, right? So what we had to do is figure out a way of making this be, on the one hand, a bone, and on the other hand, something that moves. Well, those are two things that are mutually exclusive. So what we did is we made it, instead of a bone, we made it a bunch of bones. So this is the same system, but it's the bones are in pieces, so it can move. And that's the backbone. And the backbone is such an amazing, amazing development that once it got going, you know, every animal that is related to it hung on to that idea. It was a great idea.
Is it through a straw there, and then just cut,
Yeah, it's
and
just
then just
a
like
straw
cut
in
pieces
sections.
of straw?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I used a clear straw so that you can see the backbone inside. I mean, so you can see the